Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you this week talking about a topic that I think is extremely important and extremely misunderstood. And that is a topic of processing our emotions. And the reason why this week's episode is called Get Out of Your Head is because what we're going to talk about today and what you're going to see as the episode keeps going on is the act of processing emotions. Most of like the juicy good stuff that happens in amazing parenting, in amazing relationships, in amazing joyful living happens below the neck. So we're going to talk about processing emotions. Why does it matter? What does it have to do with parenting? And why does that mean getting out of your head? Okay. And my confession for you is a really great sort of introduction into this idea. So, my confession for you is that I have been in therapy and I will be in therapy until the rest of my life because I love it so much and it's just brought me so much self-awareness and happiness and joy and understanding and all this stuff. I have been in therapy for, let's see, I know when it is in my mind because it started when my third kid was about 2 years old. So that's how I can do the math in my head. How old is my daughter? And it's about 2 years less than that. So that means I've been in therapy for about 14 years. And my confession for you is not that I've been in therapy for 14 years. That's a brag in my opinion. And I think everyone should be in therapy all the time. So I love the fact that I've been in therapy for 14 years. But the confession part is that I think it was probably several years, maybe even like 7 years into this work that I finally realized that everything that I thought I was doing to process my emotions was actually stuff I was doing that made me stay attached to my emotions and over identify with my emotions and become enmeshed with my emotions and turn my emotions into like a major sort of like reinforcement of my ego stories, like all the things I thought were helping me, you know, get these emotions sort of to go through and move past my emotions were actually totally counterproductive. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, we talk all the time about processing emotions, like the expression process your emotions. Like it's pretty common. We've all heard it before. We probably have even said it before. When we see our kids be really upset, we might look at them and say, oh, they're having some big feelings. They need to process their emotions. Or we get a like crazy piece of information at work or some sort of, gut punch from an interaction with a family member or something like that. And we might even be talking to a friend and saying, like, I really need to process this. This is a lot, right? So, that expression, process your emotions, is really, in the zeitgeist. But do we actually know what it means to process your emotions? So I always give my clients like a specific definition that when we talk about processing emotions, because it is really important that we pay attention to this. So when I say process your emotions, and I would even posit that this is what process your emotions means when any professional says this to you, what that actually entails is feeling the physical sensations of your emotions. So think about our just like common, you know, um everyday language around feelings. We'll say something like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous about this presentation I have to give. I have a pit in my stomach." Or I can't believe I'm getting married tomorrow. I'm full of butterflies in my tummy, or um I'm about to go and have this really hard conversation with my boss and my heart is pounding outside my chest, or this was such a crazy coincidence, I have goosebumps all over my body, or I just got the shivers, or there's a lump in my throat, or on and on and on and on. It is part of our awareness, but I think I would say it's like just beneath the surface. It's not necessarily in our real intentional consciousness, but we are aware of. And it is not bizarre to talk about the fact that when we have emotions, we have physical sensations attached to those emotions. Like, emotions are not just this sort of like knee jerk thing that happens to us that results in us like losing our temper or starting to cry or walking away from somebody or never calling someone again or, kissing someone or whatever. Like, all of those things come from our emotions, but there are actual like physical processes happening inside of our bodies that we can actually experience biologically, tactily, with the sensation of feeling, of touch. That awareness exists inside of us. Like, we it's no big deal for you to talk about it in that way, right? It's part of our language. But unfortunately, even though it is like sort of like almost like a common knowledge that when you get nervous, you have a pit in your stomach, or when you're excited, it feels like butterflies, or when you're sad, you cry, or you have a lump in your throat because you're trying not to cry, right? Even though that's like kind of common knowledge, when we're actually in the moment experiencing emotions, we often do not pay attention to that physicality at all. And when we talk about processing our emotions, what we're really saying, I think a lot of times, is get over your emotions or make your emotions go away, or, um, you know, fix this problem that's causing you to have these emotions. That's not processing your emotions. And that's what I mean when I say that for a long time in the first years of my therapy and even before I started therapy, the things that if you had asked me, like, how do you process your emotions? I probably would have said the main thing I would have said that I do to process my emotions is to talk about them with a friend or with my therapist and analyze the situation that has caused me to have my emotions. And if we think about it, most of the time when we're talking about, um, our emotions, we're not really even talking about our emotions. We're really talking about the thing that gave us our emotions. Like, my mom did this and it really pissed me off. And what is the matter with her? And let me give you the backstory as to like how we got here and, what I think is the matter with her and, blah, 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 blah. Right. I didn't even tell you. I very cursorily mentioned that I was pissed off, and everything else I just said was really storytelling and analysis and a backward gaze and focusing on the object of my, you know, anger, not my actual experience, not me at all. And that does not help emotions go away. We talk about venting, and venting can be a really great sort of beginning step to some of this stuff, but it is also a very tempting place to stay. And when we stay there, what we're doing is actually staying attached to our emotions. We are entrenching the story that we're telling. The more we tell the story, the more entrenched it becomes in our minds, and the more permanently it becomes one of the bricks in the wall of our ego. And processing emotions has to do with really feeling those physical sensations. And when you think about it, what it means is allowing your emotions to be something that are very real and present right now, and at the same time impermanent. They're like clouds in the sky. They just pass. They do. Feelings aren't forever. That's a very important message for all of us to hear. If you are an Ania type 4 or someone in your life is an Ania type 4, feelings aren't forever is a big piece of the work that an Anemia type 4 has to do, incidentally. Little sidebar there. So remembering that feelings aren't forever and feelings aren't facts, we can sort of release our attachment to it. But even that is still a cerebral thing. That is me giving you a rationale for why we shouldn't be attached to our feelings and why we don't need to do this storytelling. I want to take you way deeper than that. And I mean, I want you to start to think about emotions as a physical process that happens literally just like all the other physical processes that are happening in your body. So I'm going to get a little weird right now, and I think it's going to be helpful, but it also might be a little weird. You know, imagine after you've eaten like a big meal or something like that, like Thanksgiving, we're in the time of the holidays right now. You've just eaten a big holiday meal. You're laying on the couch, your belly feels really full. And I don't know about you, but usually when I've overeaten like that, right afterwards, I'm like, why did I do this to myself? And I also know like the only thing I can do is just sit and wait for my body to deal with this giant like days worth of food that I ingested in 30 minutes. And we know what that feels like, right? You feel super, super full. You probably get a little gassy at some point. You can almost feel that whole mistake that you made moving through your body and coming out, you know, when it's time to move along. And then it leaves your body and it's over, and that meal is done, and that time of your life has passed. Literally, the same thing is happening to you with your emotions. Something happens and now you have like ingested this experience and you're having all of these emotional responses to this experience. And if you are patient and you pay attention to your body, if you allow those sensations to occur and you know that it is literally your body is the thing that is dealing with and processing and eventually jettisoning this experience that you had, it becomes a lot easier to, by the way, be unafraid of experiencing any emotions. Think about all the things that you do in your life that are sort of like avoidant or designed to avoid some outcome that you don't want to have happen, right? Most of the time, like even in the most extreme sense, like let's say you put your kid in a car seat, and one of the reasons why is because you're avoiding your kid becoming injured in a car accident. If I were working with you and we were at this point in our journey where you were really ready for me to push you pretty hard, I might say to you, like, are you afraid of your child getting injured, or are you afraid of how awful it would be if your child got injured? Are you afraid of your kid getting injured, or are you afraid of like the sadness and horror and loss and worry that would happen to you if your child got injured? Most of the time, the things that we're doing in our lives aren't even based on fear of an actual outcome, but fear of how it would feel if that outcome were to occur. Even extreme things. When we are able to look at our emotions as literally the Thanksgiving dinner that you just need to wait for your body to do its thing with, all of a sudden, well, okay, I don't really want to feel like that after Thanksgiving, but I also know that this too shall pass, right? Like my body knows how to handle it when I eat too much turkey, and eventually it will do what it needs to do and I won't feel that way anymore. And it's the same thing with, oh, I'm afraid to have this really hard conversation with my mom. Yeah, that conversation probably will be really hard. And you're probably going to have all of the feelings that you're afraid you're going to have. And she might do all of the things that you're afraid she might do. And that is something that you, as a creature, can ingest and experience and allow to pass through your body. And your body knows what to do with all of those scary experiences. So that's kind of what I mean when I talk about processing emotions. And I really want you to start thinking about all the experiences you have in your life as something you take into your body, and all the emotions that you have around those experiences as your body doing its thing with that experience that it has just been taken in, and allow that to be just what's going on without any need to fix it, stop it, make it go away, analyze it, make it mean something, make it this like brick in your wall. None of that stuff. It's just something that's going on. And then you can start to pay attention to your body. And I'm going to take this even further with you today. I'm going to actually walk you through um, a practice that is not rocket science, and it's definitely not new. I certainly didn't make this up, but it's a process that helps you um, actually get out of your head and into your body. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit of like how this stuff that we're talking about right now actually dovetails into the Enneagram, believe it or not. So, if you have ever heard of this exercise, that's awesome. You can just maybe push the like fast forward 30 seconds button on your phone if you want to. But it's called the five senses, and it is a really great tool to help your body calm down, help you process your emotions. You will notice almost always if you do this exercise that you feel much more grounded and calm afterwards than you did when you started. And that is not just because you fixed your feelings, but because you actually allowed them to flow and move through you. It's kind of like if I put on super tight pants after that Thanksgiving meal, I'm going to be experiencing a lot more discomfort than if I put on my stretchy PJ pants and just lay on the couch and let nature do its thing. Right? That's the exact same thing that doing a mindfulness practice does. It's like it's making your pants a little stretchier. it's it's unbuttoning after a big meal, okay? So think about if you and you can even do this, even if you're driving in your car right now, even if you are sitting at a red light, if you're waiting for your kid at pickup. I don't know why all my examples today have to do with being in a car, but apparently that's where my brain's at. Just look around you really quickly and notice five things that you can see. And instead of five things, you can even make it simpler and say five colors that you can see. So I'm going to do this with you. So right now, where I'm sitting, I can see the green of a potted plant in front of me. I can see the brown of my desk. I can see the blue of my wrist rest that I use because I'm an old lady and I don't like having my wrists hurt when I type at my computer. I can see the white of my chapstick, and I can see the red of my lipstick. And that is five colors. And that is literally the process I want you to do, but not out loud, just in your mind when you do this exercise. And then notice four sounds. You have to be quiet when you do this and just listen. And right now, one of the biggest sounds you can hear, I'm sure, is the sound of my voice because you're listening to this podcast. But you might be also be able to hear the noises that your car is making, or the sound of the wind in the trees, or even the beating of your own heart sometimes, especially if you're really upset. Sometimes your heart is pounding in your chest, like we were talking about before. You can even hear it throbbing in your ears, right? So, four sounds. And then three physical sensations. So, always one of the sensations I notice when I'm doing this exercise is I can feel the seat supporting me, or if I'm laying on the ground, I'll say I can feel the floor supporting me. Like I can feel the pressure of that, like pushing up on my legs or my back. I can feel the scratchiness of my sweater. I can feel my hair tickling my cheek. I can feel my glasses resting on my face. You get the idea. And then you keep going on with two smells and one taste. And usually at the end of this process, like even now, as I'm doing this, almost like not really doing it, but it's like only demonstratively doing it for you, I can feel myself feeling more present, just a little bit less sense of like urgency or like, oh, I have all these points I want to get across to my listeners today. Right now, instead, I feel like, yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm here right now in this present moment. Everything's okay. That is probably the easiest mindfulness practice that we can do. It's so easy. It's easier than meditation. It's easier than a body scan. It's easier than sometimes deep breathing. It's very doable. And when you do that, you get out of your head and into your body, even though there's an interplay happening between your head and your body, obviously. You are paying attention to something outside of your own sort of like echo chamber, if that makes sense. It makes a big difference. So, what is the juxtaposition between this like emotional processing stuff and the Enneagram? Well, um, the Enneagram talks about three centers of intelligence, and all of us have all three centers, but there is a triad of the Enneagram that is dominant in one center over the other. So there's three triads, and each triad is dominant in one center of wisdom. Doesn't mean they don't have the other centers. We all have all three, but it just means that that's our primary place that we start in experiencing the world. And those centers are your head, which is what we've been talking about, also your heart and your gut, or sometimes it's called, thinking, feeling, and doing. Or your gut center is also sometimes called your intuition, and your heart center is sometimes called your emotions, right? Your thinking center sometimes can be called your mind. Either way, whatever words we use, we all have all three of these ways of experiencing the world around us. But what's interesting is that all nine types, no matter what their starting place is, no matter what their dominant center of intelligence is, all nine types go from their starting point into their head very quickly. And if you're a head type, you started in your head from the very beginning. But for example, I am an Ennea type 1, and my dominant center of intelligence is my gut or my body, my intuition. Even so, as a 1, I might start there, and then immediately I go into my mind to analyze whatever information I just got from my gut, or to act on whatever information I got in my gut, make a plan about it, rationalize it, especially if the thing I felt from my gut is something that feels morally wrong or against pre existing rules that I've made for myself. My natural tendency would be for my mind to spend a lot of time rationalizing around why did I feel that way, or why should I do it actually, or maybe shouldn't I do it, all of those things. And the same thing happens with if your dominant center is your emotions, you still will move very quickly up into your head to do this whole juxtaposition between what I've got going internally and what I've got going on outside of me. And that's just a product of us being humans and having egos. Our minds are these like huge, clunky, cumbersome, sometimes hindrances that we have to carry around with us all of the time. Um, even when I used to be a birth doula, one of the things we learn about really early on in training, and if you've had a kid, you know this already just from maybe learning about what it's like um, to give birth if you've been pregnant before. Like the reason why human beings are born the way that they are is because of how ginormous our heads are. It's not just a metaphor, it's a very real thing. Like our ginormous brains are the thing that dictates just like literally everything about our physiology, about our birth process, and about our psychology and our way of being in the world. We just revert to our brains so quickly, and it can be a hindrance, like I said. So, this process of tuning to, well, first of all, what is your dominant center of wisdom? And leaning into that in a healthy way, and recognizing that for all of us, no matter what our dominant center of intelligence is, we will probably be spending too much time up in our heads, and we probably will benefit immensely from getting out of there. Processing your emotions is only one example of how getting out of your head and into your body is so helpful. The truth is that growth and change and realization, decision making, all of these things, almost all of it truly happens below the neck. So think about which triad you're in if you know what your type is. If you don't know your type and you want to, remember that you can always set up a one-off Enneagram session with me to either discover your type, learn more about your instincts, learn more about how to work with your type, learn more about your centers of intelligence, whatever place you are in your Ennea journey, so to speak. Those sessions are available to you right on my website. You can literally just click on the link and set up an Enneagram session for yourself. But if you do know your type, just a little refresher, a reminder, types 8, 9, and 1 are gut types. Types 2, 3, and 4 are heart types. And types 5, 6, and 7 are head types. And so that will tell you like what is your dominant center of intelligence and how does that interplay with your other centers, and how can you move through those centers and utilize all three of them so that you are not stuck up in your head and attaching and entrenching your emotions instead of processing and allowing them to move through you. And then the last thing I want to talk about is how we can apply this to parenting. When our kids are really upset, one of the worst things we can do with them is try to rationalize with them. How often, when your child's upset, have you tried to cheer them up by saying, well, not everybody hates you. Remember, you went on a play date last week, or your teacher doesn't hate you. I just got a message from them saying that, that you did great in class the other day, or I see you got a B, but you also have, look at all these other A's you've gotten over here. Or, well, if that person is upsetting you so much, maybe you should just go and tell them this, and this, right? We're stepping into like problem solving mode, rationalizing mode, analysis mode. These are all head activities. And when somebody is upset and we indulge in this like heady exercises, we are accidentally helping them stay more fully attached and firmly entrenched in whatever circumstance it is that has created this emotional dysregulation. We usually wind up finding ourselves getting upset as well because we're co-regulating with that upset person. We're not helping them at all. Like, we're not helping them calm down in the moment. And we're also not helping them let this moment go so that it doesn't stay with them in the future. We almost are turning these moments that could be ephemeral into these formative issues that your kid is going to hold on to for many, many years. So, really think about when your child is upset, how can you show up from your body center, from your heart center, instead of your head center first? Allowing that processing to happen before anything else. That is the key to helping your child re-regulate. And sometimes that means that we just need to take space from them because they need to be in a space where they're not receiving more mental stimulation so that their brain isn't on overdrive anymore. So think about that. And think about that for yourself. When you are upset with your child, when you are in a parenting moment that is starting to create a lot of emotion inside of you, how can you get out of your head and allow that emotion to pass through you? And it might, just like with your kiddo, involve you taking some space so that you actually have the time to process that turkey dinner, to allow that stuff to flow through you, to change into your stretchy pants. All of those things might be hard for you to access when you're still in the moment interacting with your child. You might need to take a breather, and that's okay, right? Or even just having that awareness that, like, I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now. And instead of trying to make them go away or take action or do something about them, I'm actually going to do this process of taking some time, slowing down, allowing things, paying attention to the physicality of what's around me. I mean, imagine being in a tough conversation with one of your kids and you start to feel yourself getting upset or whatever, and you decide to pay attention to your body during that conversation. And you just say, I'm sitting here on this couch. I feel the couch supporting me. I feel the, I'm starting to sweat. I can notice that. I can notice the tears welling up behind my eyes. I'm going to pay attention to my body. That grounding that you are doing can be transformative in the way that you show up with your child. And obviously, there's a million more things that come from this kind of practice, a million more examples that we could think of how things could be different as a result of us acting from our below the neck centers. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And if that feels like a direction that you need to go in your parenting, it's time for us to talk. Let's talk about what happens when you're in your head and how can you get out of your head and create an action plan for you that will result in you getting from where you are right now to where you want to be in your relationship with your child, whether it has to do with communication, their behavior, the energy in your home, people's cooperativeness or helpfulness, all of those things that I hear all the time we want to change in our families. It starts with that discovery call that you hear me talk about every week. The link for that is in the show notes, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.